Welcome to the Miami Heat Zone podcast. I'm your host, Martel Llewellyn. Guys, we're pushing to 4,000 subscribers. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, and thank you for all the support. So today we have a sports legend. We have Sports Fluent in the building. Fluent, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you? Good to be here.
Good. So for the people who don't know you, just tell the people what you do and what your YouTube channel is about and where they can find you on all the platforms that you're on.
Cool. So my job is to make people more fluent in sports. You can find us YouTube at Sports Fluent, and all our socials are sports_fluent. We currently just hit 15 shows. So we got basketball, football, hockey, soccer. We got a show all in Spanish. So we got anything you need from a sports. And actually, we just signed our first hip hop show. So Source, of course, is doing a show called Source is Chillin'. So anything you need from sports to hip hop is on Sports Fluent YouTube.
Thank you so much, Fluent. So when we're talking about the Miami Heat now and with Jimmy Butler's contract extension, there's a bunch of people who do want to sign him, to that extra deal. And then there's a lot of people who don't, with Jimmy Butler, he's 35 years old, getting older, and he's really not playing that many games anymore. I would say maybe 60 to 65 games. And then even when he is playing, I would say he's really only trying maybe in like 20 or maybe 30, like of those games. So what should the Miami Heat do with Jimmy Butler going forward, especially with what Pat Riley has said?
So they have a pretty difficult decision to make, because you're going to argue whether it's Bam or Jimmy. But in terms of playoffs, Jimmy Butler's probably still their best player. I personally, I'll get to Bam in a second. Let me stick with Jimmy. So Jimmy's got $100 million tied up over this year, this season, and next season. I believe the second one is a player option. It's either a player option or a team option. Let me go with player option. He's going to take that $52 million because no one's signing him to more than that. So if you're the Heat, you got to decide: am I building this team around Butler and Bam? Is that enough? To your point, Jimmy doesn't focus on the regular season, and at his age, maybe he shouldn't. Maybe he should focus on, but he needs to be healthy going into the playoffs. And that's okay. I'm okay with that with a guy that age. If you're asking my opinion, if I'm Pat Riley, I'm probably blowing up the team and starting to build around Bam. So that's the only guy who's untouchable for me is Bam. I don't like the way this roster is constructed. I don't know if you have more questions. I'm going to go. I don't want to go on for like a 10-minute whole rant on Miami, because my feelings on them are pretty strong. Because when I look up and down their roster, and I pulled it up to make sure I wasn't wrong, the only people who are under contract, guaranteed money for next season, obviously you got Jimmy for one, and then his option for the second. You've got Bam, Tyler Hero, Rozier, and Duncan Robinson. And JJJ, Triple J. Other than that, everybody else has a player option, team option. So they have some flexibility if they can get out of that $93 million that's guaranteed to Jimmy. So I think there's teams out there that want him. They think that he could be that missing piece. I don't think that the Jimmy Bam. Listen, I think they peaked when they made the finals 2 years ago, and that was their opportunity against Denver. They didn't cash in on it. I'm very, if you've watched my show, I say this all the time to my co-host Chill. I always say, fail fast. It's not working. Boom. Right. Like I use Portland as the example. They made it to that Western Conference Finals with Dame. And then they're like, oh, let's just run it back because we're there. No, you're not. And I feel like Miami could fall into that trap. I really don't like Duncan Robinson or Tyler Hero on a team that has championship aspirations to play that much. I like Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero. Tyler Hero coming off the bench, right? There was a reason he was, sixth man of the year. Like that's a perfect role for him. Pat Riley's going to have to make some difficult decisions. If I was in his shoes, I'm trying to move Bam to the 4, and we've been saying this for like 5 years. Move Bam to the 4, and then just build a roster around him of a stretch 5, obviously some shooters, like this typical stuff, right? Like if you look at the way championship teams are built in the NBA, you're going to find exceptions, but for the most part, it is you have a superstar, you have a great defender, and sometimes it's the same person. Like if you want to look at Giannis, when the Bucks made that run, you have a perimeter defender, right? And then you have a secondary scorer, and then role players that are around, shooters, defenders. Like you mix and match them up. But it's typically a superstar, a secondary scorer, a perimeter defender. Well, you've got would you consider Bam a superstar?
Well, I think you have to, only because, he's pretty much averaging 20 and 10. And that's like another question for me too, like just for you too, because think about it, how is Bam not winning DPOY when listen, don't get me wrong, I think that the Miami Heat, yes, we haven't been good these past, 2 years, but in terms of just Bam alone and everything that he has to do and with the players around him, how is he not winning DPOY when he's pretty much guarding 1 through 5? I mean, he might struggle like every now and then, like with Embiid and Joker, but outside of those two, he's
Everyone's going to struggle with those
exactly. Exactly. So how is he not winning DPOY?
because
But I definitely think that, I
that's not how
definitely think that he's an
that's not how
all-star.
they give out the award. Right? They don't give out the award based on who's the best defender. You can go down the list. Very
Right.
rarely does the best defender actually win DPOY, right? Like Marcus Smart was nowhere near the best defender in the league a couple of years ago, right? And that's why people struggle with this award. It's because it's always been the same. Go back and look. You have to have the stats. So you need to have, rebounds and steals, which are blocks, some combination of those things, which again doesn't necessarily mean you're a good defender, but you have to have those. They want your advanced analytics, right? They look for defensive win share and those types of things, your plus minus. Then they look at where your team ranks as a defensive unit, which I find hilarious because the team that has better defenders and are a better defensive unit, it's going to be easier
Yeah.
for that defender. Because if you have a great perimeter defender, it's easier as for Rudy Gobert to sit back and play defense against other bigs or help side, come and get blocks like he does all the time. Yeah, it's easier to do that. I'd like to see you be the only perimeter defender when there's no one behind you to cover your back, or to be that defender, the rim protector, knowing that you're, let's say you have Dame and Beasley. I'm not picking on the Bucks at all. Beasley up at the perimeter, knowing they're going to get beat every time, and now I got to defend my man and their man. That's significantly harder. So when people make the argument, Bam, Wemby, they didn't do a better job than Gobert this year. I'm like, do you watch basketball?
It's
Like
crazy.
from the way they pick Depoy, the stats, the advanced stats, and the team defense, yeah, sure. But from anyone who watches basketball and analyzes basketball, like, no way is that guy a better defender. So back to the original. So if Bam's your superstar, cool. Who's going to be that guy that, can drop 30, can drop 40 on any given night to be that secondary? I don't know. That's where I struggle. I don't think Bam's a 1. I think
No,
Bam's
I don't think so either.
right. I
Yeah.
think he's a 2. So who's the one that can come in? That's the big question. That's the question. Because the other pieces are easy. Like I can find shooting, I can find defenders, I can find rebounders, I can find guys that do one or two things. Bam needs a number 1. I just don't think Jimmy, and listen, let me go back because I never said this at the beginning. I love Jimmy Butler. He is one of my favorite players. He might be the only non-Laker who's on my top 10 favorite players all time. Him and AI. So it's very few people that I like as much as I like Jimmy Butler. But at this point, he's not a number 1 guy that's going to be that, 1A on a championship team. And that's not I know people say, I'm not hating. I love Jimmy. This is not a knock on him. It's just at this point, that's not who he is. Like Jimmy in Philly, I screamed and yelled from the Raptors. You got Maxey at the 1, Jimmy probably at the 3, and Embiid at the 5. That team becomes significantly better and scary in the playoffs. They never should have let him go in the first place. But that's for a
But
different.
do you think that he deserves a max though? I mean, because doesn't that take away from the future? And doesn't, because I know a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, but paid D Wade," but D Wade's a whole different story. He was drafted, by the team. They're going to build a statue of D Wade, and the fact that he's not in ownership is a whole nother conversation that we'll get to later. But it's just like it's kind of different. I think that Jimmy Butler, it's like what you said, he's been great, but in terms of roster construction too, because think about it, a lot of people don't talk about how Kyle Lowry was a huge mistake, and Jimmy Butler doesn't. Really, we don't hold Jimmy, like accountable to that by any means. He brought Kyle Lowry here, $90 million on our books, $30 million a year. It's like kind of like what you said. He was supposed to be our Drew Holiday swing in terms of when Kyle Lowry came to the Miami Heat. I'm not saying he would have had the same production, but he was at least supposed to be the connector with Jimmy, Tyler, and Bam. He was supposed to be the connecting piece, but instead he came here, and it's like he didn't even want to still be in shape. And when he knew he was coming to the Miami Heat,
listen, Kyle is definitely in a different mindset when he made it to Miami. I'm not gonna hold any player any player accountable for what the GM does. Because at the end of the day, better players than Jimmy have asked for guys either to be brought in or to be shipped out, and the GM's job is not to listen, right? Like I can go back to Michael Jordan hating Jerry Krause for shipping off his protector and his best friend in Charles Oakley for Bill Cartwright, a lesser player, but better for the team's needs, right? So even though he hated that move, clearly it worked out and it was for the best. Now, if it didn't work out, okay, he would have had an issue. So that's where I say, like, just because he wanted Kyle and they were friends and all that kind of stuff, you can't, like, if Kyle's former team, the Raptors, brought in Jakob Pertl to try to appease his Pascal Siakam. Him, I don't know if you know this, Jakob Pertl and Pascal are best friends. And so they had traded him away in that DeMar DeRozan trade to San Antonio. They have an opportunity to bring him back. They'd give away first round picks for Jakob Pertl. And now look where they are, right? Like, they don't even get their or maybe I think they might get their pick. It was supposed to go to San Antonio. No, who was it? Utah? I don't know. Anyways, they don't even, they're a complete mess because they gave around first round picks for Jakob Pertl. And then what do they end up doing? They trade Siakam. So I'm not going to hold Jimmy Butler for the Kyle Lowry, but yeah, they expected more for them. They probably expected Kyle from 2-3 years ago. He's just not that guy anymore. He's coming to the end, which is sad because he's been fun to watch over the years. But yeah, so I'm not going to hold him accountable for it. But is this team? You're a Heat fan, right? Are they ready to win a championship tomorrow? No. So unless they can bring in there's a lot of great free agents, right? But who are they? Okay, are they bringing in LeBron? Well, he's 40. He's probably not going anywhere. I'm trying to think of who are we just did the top 10 on Foon and Show.
But how do you feel about Donovan Mitchell? Because like I know that there's a lot of rumors how the Miami Heat have wanted him, but are you willing all in and give up guys like Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Nikola Jovic? Like, how do you feel about those young guys?
I don't
about going all for a guy like Donovan.
Jovic, to be honest. He's probably the one guy I don't want to give up. But if you're going to keep Jimmy and Donovan Mitchell, I don't see how that works either. Because then you're going to have $100 million to him. Let's learn what is he next year? $48 million to Jimmy, $34 million to Bam. Probably what's Donovan getting? Another 40, 45, 50 million.
Yeah,
like roughly. That's $140 million on three guys. That's salary cap. So now, listen, Miami Heat have gotten very lucky. Call it good, call it luck. Undrafted guys playing well above where they should. I wouldn't call that a good strategy to live by, right? Like they got very lucky, very lucky. They've been amazing, and give them all the credit in the world. You think they really can keep getting lightning in a bottle time after time? I wouldn't trust that. Right. I wouldn't trust that. So I don't think that's a good move. And to be honest, the one move that I still think people aren't talking about that still could happen is the guy that they've been trying to get to Miami since last summer. Dame in Milwaukee may not have. I don't think he's happy, right? When he says I'm lonely in Milwaukee. He had, listen, your best friend comes to you, or your parents, whoever comes to you and say, hey, we're going on vacation. Oh, where are we going? Oh, we're going to South Beach. You pack up your shirts, your short sleeve shirts and your shorts, and you're ready to go. And they drop you off in Milwaukee in the winter. You're not going to be happy. And that's actually still the move that makes the most sense. But now will Milwaukee take Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, the packages? Miami just doesn't have a lot of, like, who do they have? Again,
I mean, obviously, it's like
not a lot of people under contract, unless Caleb Martin picks up his option, or they pick up his Josh Richardson, Thomas Bryant. Like, who are you excited about there? Right? It's tough. So unless he somehow forces his hand out, I don't see the player that can come in next to Jimmy and Bam, and it's not. And I like Donovan Mitchell too. He's not the guy. I think Dame would make the most impact on that team because Jimmy and especially Bam's significantly good defender, but he had a really great defender in Giannis. Now Giannis struggled with some injuries. Where's the perimeter defender? Well, I think Jimmy's better. Jimmy's better than Beasley. So I think that combination, right? The thing with Dame, you have to have. He's not a great defender, right? Let's be honest. So you need a good perimeter defender next to him and someone behind. So I think Miami suits that better. Not to go too much into Milwaukee, but Milwaukee was built. They brought in a defensive-minded coach who was an assistant to a defensive-minded coach, thinking they had Drew Holiday, Giannis, like they had this defensive-minded team. And then they make the trade, and now it's like, no, we're a completely different team, and that's why the coaching thing didn't work. Doc Rivers is there. They obviously underperform. Of course, there's injuries. So it's chaos up there right now. So they're going to have to make some decisions too. And it relates to Miami because Miami can swoop in and be like, hey, things aren't working out. Like, what if you had these pieces and these draft picks and maybe get a third team? I hate saying this. Get a third team involved and kind of work something around. That might be the best option. If that doesn't happen, you're gonna kill me for this. I say blow it up. Just build it. Is it blasphemous to say get rid of Bam? Just blow up the whole thing and start over? Is that blasphemous? Maybe keep. I'd like to keep Bam, but
yes,
what you
because going into the future, I think that we still do have a young core. Tyler, Jaime, Jovic, and Bam. Jimmy Butler. See, like this team has to pick a direction because it's hard for them because they're kind of in the middle. But then at the same time, it's like they're paying all these guys, but we're really not getting the production. We're paying Duncan, Tyler, Terry. Like I think that Terry is a good player. I just think that they should have went after maybe like a guy like DeJounte Murray. He would have fit better next to Tyler Hero. He's younger. He's more athletic. He's that type of style for the Miami Heat. But just in terms of the future, if they do trade Jimmy, I'm fine with that because you can probably get a few picks and maybe one, maybe two young players. You know what I mean? Like a guy like Kuminga. Like if we can get like a guy like Kuminga on the Miami Heat, going into the future with this core, we're kind of almost similar to OKC, where we have a good group of young guys that we can build going into the future with.
Tyler, Duncan, and Rozier, in my opinion, are all guys that I'd love to have coming off my bench.
Yes.
And Miami is going to rely on them to be starters, and that's where the problem is. The worst place you want to be in the NBA is where Miami is, which is right in the middle. Right? You're not bad enough to get a high draft pick, although this year's draft, you're not high enough to get this is how bad this year's draft is. I'm in it. For real. I'm for real. Hopefully I can slip into the first round. I better get picked before Bronny, but anyways, different you're not bad enough to get a high draft pick. You're not good enough to be a championship contender. And you're stuck in that middle ground where we got to pay our players or they leave. But if we pay our players, we can't get better. Like it's the worst possible. And that's why I say like it's hard and fans hate this, but it is a business at the end of the day. And so if I want to win it, now it depends what they want. I want to win a championship. I got to make those hard decisions and get rid of Duncan Robinson, get rid of Tyler Hero, get rid of, Jimmy. Maybe you keep one of them, but their role needs to be properly assigned. Or I want to keep selling tickets and keep my fans happy. Well, then I sign someone like, I don't, maybe not James Harden, but he's the first name that popped into my head. That's a free agent. That's a gettable. And, at least he's a name. Okay. Look, we're trying. Look at what we're trying to do. Now you got James Harden, Jimmy Butler, and Bam. Yeah. Look at the great posters. Not going to win anything. Right? Like it's in Phoenix. Hey, we got KD and Beal and Booker. You're not winning anything with those three. Never. But hey, they're going to sell out. They're going to sell out. So it just depends where you want to go.
Got you. Now, right before we close, Fluent, just tell the people where they can find you. And just once again, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, man, anytime. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all the kind of regular social stuff is at the sports_fluent. And then the YouTube channel is shockingly Sports Fluent. And check out, we got some good merchandise there too. So you can get some nice Fluent and Chill. Anyways.
There you go, guys.
Some cool
make
merch.
sure you guys go over there, subscribe to his channel, go buy his merch. And once again, thank you, Fluent, for coming on the show.
Yeah, anytime, brother. Appreciate it, man.